Hey, Warrior Saints. Glad to have you beautiful people with us as we continue our conversation from yesterday. Now, to go back to your Noah stuff. All right. So obviously the story of in Noah and God's, healing of the fallen world, the corrupted nature, the corrupted world that man had become corrupt in his heart, it says. Noah is, so it's a fascinating tale, that whole chapter 6, 7, 8, 9 of Genesis, because God looks around at the state of affairs and decides this did not work. This was a failed experiment. I'm going to wipe them all out, right? Because it says, let me read it just to make sure I got it right, but in chapters, it's chapter 6, right, of Genesis. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord, verse 6, was sorry that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the ground, man and beast, creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. Found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then that verse that you popped up there earlier, verse 9, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, right? And that's that word, the walking with God. It's not like that they went arm in arm like on the beach and there was one footprints and then there was two. And it's not that. It's scripturally speaking, as you said, to walk with God means to abide by his commandments. We see that in the chapter previous with Enoch. Mm-hmm. Enoch didn't die.
He walked with God.
He walked with God
no more.
and was not, right? St. Paul, which you alluded to, like in the baptismal text of Romans 6, Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father so that we too might walk in the newness of life, right? That walking means that we follow what God has the framework that he's designed for us, right?
Yeah. And we're invited into that framework. Right. And then once we make the decision, yes, I'm going to do that, then we're bound by that framework. Mm-hmm. And we are held to the standard that framework is. And that comes with that framework, if you can say it that way.
Yeah.
And then to beat up on Mike Tomlin as a Steelers fan, then when we say the standard is the standard is actually high. It's not mediocrity.
Yeah, totally.
It's the standard becomes the cross. I mean, St. Paul talks about that even further. He says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me, gave himself for me. We hear that in Galatians. It's this, I am crucified because the framework only leads to the cross. It's no more you do you, boo-boo. It's no more you are the reference. It is that becomes the reference.
Yeah, you see it. I mean, it's great that you pulled that out. I mean, Paul has given himself to God, to Christ God.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so he, in some sense, identifies in... I know it sounds funny to talk about the apostle like that, but for our conversation, I mean, he has declared himself to be, to identify as one who is in Christ, right? In baptism, right? He goes later in chapter 3, anyone who is baptized in Christ has put on Christ. He's, he's new. 2 Corinthians says the same thing, right? I think you've got that in there, chapter 5. From now on, we regard no one from a human point of view, even though we once regarded Christ from a human point of view. We regard him thus no longer. Therefore, this is verse 17 of 2 Corinthians 5. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come, right? It's like what was once is no more. And Paul is saying, I think, I identify as a follower of Christ God, as one of his servants. Really, the Greek word and the Hebrew words are slave. That's the identity that he has chosen. And now that he has chosen that, he must abide by and walk in the newness of life. And that goes to what you were saying before, i.e. the framework. And really, that's what I guess our encouragement for all of our warrior saints today should be, is look, if you're going to say you're a warrior saint, if you are going to identify as a Christian, as one who follows Christ, you now have to walk a different type of life, a different framework.
Yeah. So my question is, did St. Paul identify as that? And maybe it's just nitpicking. Or was St. Paul called to it? And then in his answering that call to it, he then walks and follows and goes along this new path. And then that becomes his framework and he continues along that path.
Yeah, totally. I
Okay.
mean, I don't know that Paul would have said that he is a Christian the way you and I would say that today, right?
Right.
I think St. Paul wrote before Acts, the book of
Yeah.
Acts, and in
There
Acts
was
11.
no Christians yet.
I mean, at
Yeah.
least by the lip. Who knows what was like then, but at least as we can find in the scriptural reference. The point I'm making is that Paul was a Jew, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and he had some kind of encounter on the road to Damascus.
Right.
But then he sat there in Ananias's house
Yeah.
for a while, and he thought about things until the scales were removed and he could see. And then he jumped into business, right?
Yeah. He was taught. He was taught what it meant to do it. He learned a new way of seeing the scriptures that he already knew so well. And in so doing, walks with God on his own path, not side by side. I almost bought you a notebook the other day at the Hallmark store, by the way, that was all about footprints. And it had, daily devotionals from the footprints
I
poem.
love
Anyway,
it.
I'm going to get it for you for Christmas.
I will use it for kindling. I love that.
But he walks with God
Yeah.
because he is called to it. And I think that's where our professor of Old Testament would go down that rabbit hole and say that we have no choice. We're all on some level called to that.
Yeah.
The choice that we do have, though, is are we going to answer that
Answer
call?
the call. Thank you. I was just going to say it. Yep, absolutely.
Paul answers the call and becomes the greatest apostle and does all these wonderful things. I mean, the majority of the New Testament is Paul's, and it's Paul's interpretation of the Old Testament, which is the continuation of the story. It's beautiful, but he had to answer the call, and then he had to once he answered the call, be given this new form, way to see things so that he could see things through this new light.
Totally. And then that same call through the beautiful book is thrown to you and I and all of our warrior saints.
Without question.
You can see it in the life of Paul, obviously in Jesus Christ himself as the great, example. But that call, each and every one of us, every time we decide we want to be a warrior saint, we want to be a Christian, we want to read the Bible, we want to become, better, in our lives, that call is being what do you want to do, right?
Right.
Do you want to be like this or do you want to be like that? And because you could get with this or you could get with that. All right.
Yeah.
I couldn't help it. And so as warrior saints, that call is thrown. Will you answer the call? Are you going to start living that crucifixion life, identifying yourself as one who is a warrior saint and go get some?
Yeah. Great. I think it's phenomenal.
Hey, Warrior Saints. Thank you so much for being with us. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us get the word out there. And if you want more, visit us at warriorsaints.org and subscribe to Understanding the Bible. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.